Hello and welcome to SignHealth's 3-part mini-series live stream. The Home Office have supported us by funding SignHealth to give us the opportunity to talk about domestic abuse and to have fruitful conversations about this. This live stream will be voiced over and captioned, so all information will be fully accessible. It will be recorded and later we will upload it up onto the SignHealth website, meaning it will give you another opportunity to watch it again. Today is the second of our live stream event, and today we are going to be discussing about emergency support in connection to domestic abuse, both for victims and for survivors. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to explain the difference. So, we've got domestic abuse victims. That may be people who are currently experiencing domestic abuse situations, people who may have support, or people who might not or be aware of support out there. And then we have domestic abuse survivors, people who have been in a domestic abuse situation and have managed to escape. They may have received support, or maybe they haven't received support. It is possible, like anyone, it might be because they didn't know that there was support out there. Now, people who may have watched the first live stream, you will remember that we met 3 guests who spoke to us about their experience going through domestic abuse. Now, today we are going to be discussing if you are someone who might need emergency support, if you are in a domestic abuse situation, what that process might look like and how you can find support if you do need to escape a dangerous situation. After we've met our 3 guests and had our conversations, we are going to be having a question and answer session. This will give you the opportunity to ask questions. As you watch this live stream online, if you're thinking, actually, I might want to ask a question, or you can do this via writing a question or recording yourself in BSL up to 1 minute, and you can connect to us via WhatsApp. And SignHealth's number is up here in this corner. So are we ready? Let's go and meet our first guest. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Charles Murphy. So Charles Murphy works as a community outreach officer and manager, and he works for Sign Video and 999 BSL. 999 BSL is a fantastic platform enabling deaf people to contact the emergency services using BSL, such as police, firefighters, ambulance services and coast guards. So welcome, Charles. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So could you just explain to us, we have Sign Video and we've got 999 BSL. Are they the same or are they different? Could you explain?
So they're 2 different apps. So Sign Video is more for access for deaf people for everyday things. There's a directory, you can contact 111, the bank, all different banks, all sorts of things via the Sign Video directory. You can use it for access to work, personal budgets, and you can make all sorts of calls via the platform, basically. And with 999 BSL, that's completely different. You don't have to register. It's instant. You connect straight away to the emergency services. They're 2 different platforms, and they're, well, really with 999 BSL, it's 24/7. There's always interpreters available, like you said, fire, police, ambulance, the Coast Guard, all over the UK. Deaf people can access it.
Yeah, a big difference there. So I did have a few questions I'd like to ask. So thinking as a deaf person who might need to connect or call 999 BSL, perhaps they might be reporting a situation where they might find themselves in a domestic abuse situation. What's the response time? How do we get through to someone quickly?
So 999 BSL is for any emergencies, say a domestic abuse situation, and it will be answered within under 5 seconds. it's an emergency response, the same as hearing people who would call 999. We want the same for the 999 BSL app. It's a really quick response because it's an emergency.
So is this like connecting to an interpreter remotely? Are they aware of how to work with people who might be in a domestic abuse situation?
Yeah.
And maybe, provide that support there for them and wait whilst until the police arrives, or maybe, perhaps they might get disconnected. How would they solve this?
Okay, so the interpreter will see what your situation is. Are you at risk? Are you in a live domestic abuse situation? They will connect the call. So you've got a BSL interpreter who phones 999, so phones a hearing operator. They relay and interpret the whole situation so the 999 BSL operator is aware. They can understand what's happening. Is this domestic abuse? Is somebody throwing something? Is the person hurt? Are they scared? Are they safe? Whatever's going on, the interpreter will match with the intonation of their voice, the emotions. They will share what's happening. They will say, they won't say, what's happening, let's connect. No, they'll connect straight away. They will try and get that person to a place of safety via the 999 operator, and then it will be up to them to deliver the police or ambulance.
Oh, so that's made me think, okay, so they connect to 999 and they deal with it using the interpreters as a form of communication. But if the network, disconnects, can they track the deaf person that might be in a situation?
Yeah, so, it could be bad signal. The abuser might come into the room and you might want to hang up. There could be numerous reasons why the call disconnects. You might see that the person's quite scared in that situation, and the interpreter will relay everything to the 999 operator, and they will try and call back. They will keep the 999 operator on the call and try and connect back by video call to the deaf person. They will try and get that video call back up, and they will relay everything to the 999 operator. So they might say, look, we can't get this call back. I've tried numerous times. It's still not working. They might send the police, or they might think, okay, is this person in a place of safety? Is it a Wi-Fi issue? Can we get them?
To that point, how do they trace the phone call, and connect with that deaf person so the police might be able to track their location, and then someone could come and support them depending on the situation? That's great.
Yes, the interpreters don't judge. They will just relay and interpret the whole conversation in a neutral manner. If they might falter with their voiceover, so they will match your intonation with how you're signing. They will relay everything to the 999 operator. They will explain your positioning, if it's come up on the system. Because when you make the 999 BSL call, it says, do you allow GPS location to be shared? And if you click yes, the interpreter then can see where you are, your rough location, and they can check with you, is this where you are? And then they'll pass that over so 999 are aware.
Fantastic. That's made me think, would you record these calls in the same way that 999 do with 999 BSL? Do they record the calls?
Oh, definitely. So 999 audio calls are recorded, and so with the 999 BSL service, we match that and we record all calls. So that includes the video call of the deaf person and of the interpreter, their signing and their voiceover, and everything is recorded all the way through. And at the end, it's the same with a hearing audio call. The call is downloaded, it's put into the same storage, and it's only access for quality assurance. If the police need to follow up something, they need maybe evidence for a case, they can go back and get it. It's only access for specific examples, and you have to then get that evidence. You might use it for a court case, for example.
Fantastic. So that's not the same with signed video, is it?
No, signed video isn't recorded at all, whereas 999 BSL is. Just to match the 999 audio calls, for legal reasons, it's kept for up to 7 years in a safe place, the same as audio calls are, and then after that it will be wiped.
Fantastic. Let me just see what's next. So again, it's just made me think, within the deaf community, and we're talking about a deaf person who might need emergency support in connection to domestic abuse. Perhaps it might not be an emergency, but they might need help going through that process. So perhaps they might need to share some information, or would you be able to signpost them to the right place? What can you do?
Yeah, definitely. We have signposts. For the non-emergency services, there's 101. Unfortunately, that isn't nationwide. It's just for some regional areas, but you'll be able to look in the directory to see if your region's on there, your regional police force, and then you can contact them. And there's also the domestic abuse helpline for Refuge UK. You can even go to the police station. And we would definitely recommend using, obviously, SignHealth services.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and it's made me think, of course, Sign Video is in its own entity, and then 999 BSL, and then the interpreters have the same training, but maybe 999 BSL, do they have more training?
Oh, definitely. So the 999 BSL interpreters are trained to the same level as the operators there, because the interpreters have to be aware, they could be in that situation and seeing what's going on live. And they might be seeing a scenario develop. So there's regular training for the 999 interpreters. We cover different topics, different scenarios, like what happens, the jargon, the terminology, and the interpreters are regularly developing and training in this specific environment. And they're not just pulled in as a normal interpreter, say. This is specific 999 BSL trained interpreters who work on this platform. And, there are some interpreters who might not want to work in that environment. They might not want to see some blood, and they might feel a bit compromised when they see that, or they might feel a bit too emotional seeing some of these scenarios or some of the questions that you need to ask. I think you don't want them to panic. You need an interpreter who can cope in that situation if somebody is hurt or in danger, and to relay all the information to the operator.
That's really interesting when you're talking about interpreters and maybe feeling those emotions. Do they have their own support for that?
Oh, definitely. We have a mental health support team. So if there's anything after a call where they might be thinking about what they've just experienced or what they've just seen, they can come off the platform and get help straight away and get support. And, they might feel like they can't go back to the platform. That's fine. They might wait until a different day, until a different time. It's obviously dependent on the interpreter, but we support all the interpreters because it's key, obviously, for this interpretation process, but there's a lot that they might be seeing.
Fantastic. I think, it's making us think a lot, and maybe you out there might be thinking, I want to ask questions in connection to this, and you can do this at the end of this live stream where we will be doing a question and answer session. Really, just thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will see you later for the question and answer.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, with 999 BSL, it's fantastic, and it's a fantastic service for deaf people who might be in a situation that could be to do with firefighting, ambulance services, police and coast guards. But we do have another option where you can text 999. But you do need to make sure that you are registered first before you do this. And once you've registered, then you can text the emergency services. If you want to do this and you want to register, you do need to text the word register. Text this word to 999. And once you've sent this text, you will get an automatic response. Please make sure you read that and consent to everything that's been said. And once you do, you can reply with a yes, which is giving your consent to be registered. You will get a response that lets you know that your mobile number is now registered for the service, and this means you can use texting. And just a reminder, if you are thinking that you want to ask any questions, please do post these, or perhaps you might want to video yourself in BSL to ask a question. Please do make sure this is up to 1 minute. We will have a question and answer session right at the end where we will be able to answer these questions. So we've had our first guest, and now we've got our second. So I would like to share first the crime survey based in England and Wales conducted a year's worth of research up until the end of March 2023, where they got the statistics that say the following: 2.1 million people aged 16 and above themselves have been in a domestic abuse situation. People who identify as a woman, that's 1.7 million, and then 750,000 men who identify as men that have been in a domestic abuse situation. And this is really important to remind you that if you are in any sort of incident, it is important to report this to the police. So I would like to welcome our next guest, who is Lawrence Wheeler. And Lawrence is based in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Lawrence works as a custody sergeant officer and a lead plod for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Now, I would like to add, we do have an interpreter here. As Lawrence will be speaking, the interpreter will be working into BSL and explaining on what you can do if you want to report anything. Welcome, Lawrence. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. So my first question I'd love to ask, sorry if I could just turn my page. So I was thinking, if you could explain to me the term PLOD, what does that actually mean?
So PLOD is an acronym for Police Link Officers for the Deaf. And what PLOD do is they act as that initial link with the deaf community and when reporting to the police.
Oh, okay. So does that mean everywhere in the UK, like for instance, my local area will have a PLOD? How would I know this?
So all PLODs are advertised on their website. Unfortunately, out of the 43 police forces in the UK, not all of them have PLOD, but they will have some form of access service along the same lines.
43. And whereabouts do we have these?
Within the forces themselves, so they could be police officers, police staff, investigators. They cover lots of different roles and will bring their little bit of expertise to the table.
Fantastic. So could you explain to me, if a police officer might identify a deaf person who is a domestic abuse victim, what is that process of supporting them?
So the initial response from our force will be to have a PLOD or a link officer go with the officer to meet with the person. That is for very basic sort of communication, setting up that how would you like to talk to the officers in the future, what's happened in a very simple form, so we could put in the right safeguarding and measures to begin with, and then setting up a time and a date to return with an interpreter. That could be very quickly if it's something that's more urgent, or it could be within a couple of days if it's something that can wait and people want to wait for that.
So that's really interesting. How specific in terms of like time frame would we be able to get an interpreter in?
Well, it differs depending on force and the interpreter's availability, obviously. However, in terms of the response you can expect from the police, it all depends on the risk grading of the calls that come in. So before we spoke about contacting the police via 999 BSL, and that would be to one of our trained call handlers, and they will take a lot of information, they will ask a lot of questions. Some of them you may think, that's strange, why are they asking me that? But they are conducting a risk assessment around that. They will then, in the background, be dispatching police officers based on what they've received. So that could be a very quick response, blue lights, and sort of an emergency response in that respect. And they will be with you very quickly.
Oh, that's great. I'm thinking actually, how long, if we do have a deaf domestic abuse victim, I'm thinking of maybe their emotional state, and maybe the awareness of getting a police officer support and an interpreter in for communication. Could you give me an example of what that might look like in terms of the process?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question? Sorry.
That's okay, no worries. So for example, if we've got a deaf person who is a victim of domestic abuse, and then they've got all the support in, the police officer, they've got the interpreter, and then they might feel, it's important that they might not have awareness of information of what the process might look like or how long that time frame might be. How would you deliver that information?
So the police officers that arrive initially will be the initial information giver, I suppose. They will be gathering information from the person. Varies depending on what the incident is. However, they will then be able to signpost on to various agencies such as SignHealth. We can also link in with other agencies, other partners, social services, deaf services, things like that, and bring them all in and let you know where that contact's coming from. We can also share your preferences in that terms of contact as well, be that with an interpreter, by text, what your first language is.
Oh, fantastic. Could you explain to me, so I'm aware that the police have 3 grades of how you can report in terms of, how you might assess them. What does that actually mean?
So, as I mentioned before, when the call comes in to our call handlers, they will be making a risk assessment on the response time from the police, essentially. So grade 1, or an immediate, some forces would call it, that will be your very quick response where you have officers come to your home address, blue lights. Unfortunately, in that scenario, it may be a case that the nearest officer to you that's most appropriate to deal with that situation will have no BSL experience whatsoever. However, in the background, the call taker will be looking for the nearest plod officer, the nearest officer with those language skills to come to you as well. And the reason they do that with police officers first is that situation is very quick, it's very immediate. We don't take interpreters into that setting because we don't know what the dangers are, we don't know what they're going to be presented with, we don't want them to become a witness to a criminal proceeding, so we will save an interpreter for later and bring the officer instead. They won't have the same language skill level as an interpreter, obviously. However, they were there to help facilitate that initial contact until the interpreter can arrive.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that is interesting when you're, speaking about maybe we might not have an interpreter available immediately. If you do have a plod that has that experience and communicate, how would it work in terms of before you can get that interpreter in when you're meeting a deaf person? I would love to really get a great image of what that process would look like.
So the plod officer will be, as soon as you tell the call handler that you are deaf and your first language is BSL, or even if you're a lip reader, the plod will be dispatched. They may be coming from the other side of the county, so they may not be there as quick as the officer without the language skill, but they will be dispatched alongside the officer without the skills as well. So you can expect that response from a plod pretty quickly, albeit not as quickly as the first responder. When the plod arrives and they've been able to have that discussion with you and can determine your language preference, whatever that may be, then they will make the arrangements for an interpreter alongside that as well.
Oh, great. So I'm just thinking as well, when a plod might meet a deaf domestic abuse victim, and they're working together, so what usually happens after that?
So part of the victim contract, which applies to all victims and witnesses in the UK, is that you set up a contact agreement with the person, so with the victim, and that will be how do you want to be contacted, by what method, how often, what do you want to know? And it's set in law that the police have to sort of respond to your preferences in that respect. So it may be the case that you tell me I want a call every day with an update about what's happening. Some people may not want a call every day, they might want to hear when significant things happen, but we will take your preference on that. So it's not set in stone, that'll be something, a conversation you have with the officer at the time.
That's really interesting, and it's also made me think about you know, maybe a person who is a deaf domestic abuse victim might feel like that they can't report their situation to the police. They might feel nervous or anxious to do so. You know, particularly maybe some people from specific global majority groups like the black community and the Asian community. How would we encourage them to do so?
So the first thing I'd say is that please do. We will listen regardless of your background. We listen, and we will be gathering evidence at every step of the way. I do appreciate the uniform is a huge barrier for some people, and I tell you what, it's a barrier for me at the moment because this is very hot. But we can respond to that. If you are part of that group that feel you can't contact the police, fine. Please just make that initial contact. We can have that discussion with you about how best to communicate. We can come and visit you at home. We can come visit you with a friend. We can come visit you at a community centre if you wanted to. Please do reach out to us, because the only way we're going to know about any of this is if we're told. But we will work with you to make you the most comfortable we can and come and see you in the best possible setting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Please, to all of you watching, please make sure that you do make that call, whichever way you find best. They will sort it out, not you. The police can help sort it out.
Most definitely.
All right. And then also, I did have one more question of interest. A deaf domestic abuse victim, they might meet with you, they might meet with the police, have that conversation, produce a statement, and then later down the line, they might feel a bit anxious and change their mind and retract that statement. What do we do in these situations?
So there's not one response to that answer I can give you. That's absolutely fine, and you are totally it would not reflect badly on you at all if you choose to retract a statement at any point during the investigation. That is your prerogative. However, the police, depending on the assessment they've made of the situation, may pursue a conviction anyway. We can go down the route of a victimless prosecution, and that may be a case of actually we could see a risk here and we want to support you, and we may think that the best way to do that is by pushing for a conviction. If it's the court process that is worrying, again, please try not to worry. I know it's very easy for me to say, having been there many times. However, we will walk you through it. There will be processes where you can go and visit a court. We could introduce you to all the different people, what they wear. Some wear some fancy wigs. We can explain the purpose for all those, and we could talk you through the entire process. It's not a case of just show up on day one, there you go, off you go. We will explain and can walk you through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the key point to it. Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. So we will be seeing you later for the question and answer session. And thank you. That was a lovely conversation. And just a reminder to all of you watching, if you have any questions, maybe specifically to Lawrence about PLODs, please do text us or record a video in BSL up to 1 minute, which will be included in the question and answer session at the end. So now we've got our third guest. I would love to welcome Sahar. Sahar works for Refuge UK. This organisation is the UK's largest organisation for domestic abuse, focusing on women specifically. Sahar herself is hearing, so again, we do have our interpreter here to provide access. And Sahar will be speaking to us about domestic abuse victims and survivors. People who might need to leave their homes and flee, and why, and they need to find a safe place to go to. So welcome, Sahar. Good stuff. So I'd love to ask, sorry, if I could just turn my page. So your organisation is the UK's largest organisation in connection to domestic abuse. How do we provide support for deaf victims of domestic abuse?
Yeah, so our charity is one of many amazing charities that provide domestic abuse support. We're the largest frontline provider of frontline services, and we really wanted to expand our support to include deaf victims and survivors, but we are not the experts in this. Organisations like SignHealth are. So we got in touch with you, and you provided our frontline national domestic abuse helpline workers with some training, and also talked us through how we could make our services more accessible to deaf victims and survivors. So we provide a domestic abuse helpline, which can be accessed via a BSL interpreter through sign video. And we also provide refuge services, outreach services, and independent domestic violence advocacy support as well.
Wonderful. So actually, speaking about accessible options for deaf people who are victims and survivors of domestic abuse, how can a deaf person contact you and say or request they need refuge for safety?
So they can contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline through our website, which if they click on the BSL interpreting link, then they can go through to a sign video interpreter who will then call the helpline. They will then interpret for the person via video and then relay that to the helpline worker. They can also use that same sign video function if they want to make a referral to one of refuges.
Oh, great. Okay. So could you explain to me what a safe house is and why a victim might need it?
Refuges are safe houses in secret locations where victims or survivors of domestic abuse can go and flee to a place of safety. They are all over the country. Refuge don't run all of them, but the location is secret. And once they arrive there, it's somewhere where survivors can get back on their feet and access support through a key worker that can go with them to appointments, do weekly key work sessions with them, or as often as is needed. And then eventually the aim is to get the survivor into their own permanent accommodation. So they will make links through the housing teams or housing associations to get the survivor into their own permanent place to live, somewhere safe. And they will take them through the court process, link them in with any adult social services, children's social services for any children that are fleeing with them, and also attend appointments with them, like housing appointments, any medical appointments. There's also the option, because refuge isn't always suitable for everybody, it's not practical, not everybody wants to leave their community, particularly the deaf community, where they have links and they have that support. So there's also ways to access emergency accommodation through the local council, who have a duty to provide housing for domestic abuse survivors or victims. And then what the survivor can do is access support through an outreach service. So for example, SignHealth provide specific outreach support, so does Refuge, so that those people that are in emergency accommodation that isn't a refuge can also get that same support that they would from a refuge worker.
Wow, fantastic. So earlier you did mention about the helpline. I'd love to get a better understanding how quickly support can be put in place for deaf domestic abuse victims or survivors that might find themselves in a dangerous situation. Would they be able to get emergency support? Could you give me just a rough idea of what that would look like?
So when somebody contacts the National Domestic Abuse Helpline and they're looking to flee to a place of safety, our helpline workers will look for vacancies in suitable refuges that can support them, and then facilitate that referral process so that the refuge can then speak to the victim or survivor. And really, for safety reasons, we would look to get the survivor into a refuge that same day. Refuges sort of turn these things around within the same day or within the next day if the person's in a place of safety. But really, we'd be looking to speak to the person and then for them to be in a refuge that same day, whether it's one of our refuges or provided by another charity.
Fantastic, thank you. And a person who is a deaf domestic abuse victim or survivor, you are obviously making sure that the accommodation is appropriate for them, such as maybe a deaf person might need modification in terms of equipment. How quickly can that be provided?
So we're working to adapt as many of our refuges as possible to be able to cater to deaf survivors' needs. So this is an ongoing process, but we're looking to install light-up doorbells, have vibrating pillows, and also facilitate key work where the person can have a BSL interpreter either on Sign video or one arranged for them. And I think we're doing this gradually because our main concern is the survivor's physical safety. So at the most basic sense, them being able to be alerted if the fire alarm goes off and leave the building. And until that is, we can be sure of that, you know, we will work on the refuge until that's possible.
So the priority really is putting them into a safe space first in terms of your refuge, and then the next step is obviously putting that equipment in, but you're right, the priority is their safety. So in terms of offering housing, is it depend on like only one day they get that emergency accommodation, or is it just depending on availability? And what's the time frame in terms of, you know, how long someone can stay in a refuge?
A person can stay in a refuge really until they find their own permanent housing. It's not a sort of overnight solution. The person can stay there, recover from their experiences, get that emotional support to unpick their experiences and the trauma of their abuse, access counselling, access sort of courses and education. Some survivors have never been allowed to pay a bill in their entire life, so they're taught sort of life skills, and then we start the process sort of early on into getting someone into their own permanent accommodation, but then they continue to receive that support. And it really depends when that accommodation becomes available. Unfortunately, the availability of housing there can be really long waiting lists, especially in London. But we'll work with the council to get them permanent accommodation as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you are right, particularly in London it is very difficult. And I'm also thinking about, you know, safety for domestic abuse victims and survivors. That is the priority. I've some really lovely things there, but we definitely will see you again later for the question and answer session. So amazing. Thank you so much, Sahar, for that. And we are going to have all three guests back for the question and answer session. And it's been such a apologies for that, for the technical issue we had there and the disconnection, but we are back, and I'm sure you were all relieved. So In preparation for your question and answer sessions, we do have the 3 guests back here ready to answer. Those questions can be, connected to 99BSL. They could be for Lawrence in terms of plod, and they could be for Sahar in terms of refuge. So please do get your questions in. So right now we do have someone here, Marie, who is receiving these questions, who will gather all these questions, have a look and select them. There are a lot of questions, and we will try and select some questions and get them back and answered. Okay, over to you, Marie. Hello, Marie. Any questions?
Hello, yes, we've had lots of interesting questions for you all, so I hope you're ready. So we've got a question for Sign Video or 999BSL. Have you got any plans to expand 999BSL and cover 101 calls?
Yeah, Charles.
So 101, yes, at the moment is based on the police forces. So you'd need to check the directory to see if your police force is included. If not, sometimes you can be connected to one force and try and see if they will connect you to your force. I mean, you could always try that. If you can get through, brilliant. If not, we'd advise going to a police station or maybe potentially contacting SignHealth for non-emergency calls.
Fantastic, good. Over to you, Marie.
Yes, so we've had another question on 999BSL or for the police. Could 999BSL continue to support with communication access once the police have arrived on scene in an emergency situation? Is that a possibility to keep that interpreter remote, or would they stop providing access?
So at the moment it's VRS only, so remote video calls. You make that call and then when you've got there, sometimes the call's ended because the interpreter might be needed to take another emergency call. At the moment they can only be quite a short handover, and then once the police arrive, they can do a quick handover then. The ambulance and the police services are aware that really they need to get a VRI, so interpreter, so different video relay interpreter to continue the handover. Is that correct, Lawrence?
Yeah, from a police perspective, definitely. We will try and get, like I said, plod there initially. However, most forces now will have access to technology such as a mobile phone or an iPad, and they will be able to connect via a video relay to an interpreter if needs be.
Great. Over to you, Marie.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So, another question for the police. Do you know if the police
Nationally will be recruiting more plods?
Most definitely. We will always be trying to get more plods, as many as we can. The funding for training and things like that would be the key part. But part of my job, in a strange roundabout way, is almost to make my job redundant. We want deaf people to have the same access to the police as everyone else. So if we can remove plod, then great. But they won't be going anywhere anytime soon, because that service is there, and we would always look to expand it.
Fantastic.
Okay, another question. Again, potentially for the police. We've had a comment from a deaf Asian woman who has had an awful experience after contacting the police, and unfortunately communication has failed again and again. And so if that happens again, what would you advise her to do in the situation, or for anybody else who's struggling to access the police?
First of all, to that person, I'm very sorry if we've let you down. I'd like to think it wouldn't happen again, and we will do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again. If you are having complications with access, there's always, it's listed on websites and things as a complaints procedure. However, it can also work as feedback. Please do give it to us. It not all received as complaints. You won't be in any trouble for sending us a complaint at all. They will be picked up by our head of professional standards department, and they will respond to you. And also, we have independent members such as police and crime commissioners. If you feel the service from your force isn't correct, please contact the police and crime commissioner. They are there to hold the chief constable to account, and by pushing the chief constable, that's the top police officer, they can affect change.
Brilliant. So now a question for Refuge. Is Refuge just based in the UK or just in London only?
We're a national organisation, so we cover London and England. Yes.
Fantastic. So we have got a lot more questions. I'll just have a look. Again, another question for Refuge. So if there's a deaf woman who's going into Refuge, but she hasn't bought her phone or anything like that, how would they be able to communicate with you?
A lot of victims and survivors have to leave with nothing. So most refuges will have clothes that have been donated, toiletries, some food to get started, and also if somebody's had to leave their phone either because they've had to leave it or because the abuser is tracking their phone, then we will provide a phone for them.
Fab. So another one for BSL 999. If a deaf victim is to call BSL 999 through the interpreter, but at the same time the perpetrator realises they're on the phone and they have to hang up, what happens? Will 999 BSL be able to call back, or will they just send the police straight away?
Good question. So if the call disconnects, it won't be the interpreter who decides what to do. They follow protocol from 999, who will try and make the call back. If they call and call again and can't get through, then the operator will action the call and potentially send the police to make sure the person is safe. Their phone might have been taken away. They might be in quite a risky situation of domestic abuse, and they will send the police. They won't just think, oh, it's gone. They'll think, why has this call disconnected? They will try and follow it up. And yes, the police can attend.
Brilliant. So another question for the police, please. If there were two deaf people in an emergency situation, would there be two plods arriving to support them?
That is quite possible, yeah. We would definitely try and get two plods there. As a general rule, we try to work in pairs anyway, because one will be supporting the other. But yeah, we can have as many plods there as needs be.
Okay, so another question for everybody this time. Do you have any accessibility options available for individuals who are deaf-blind in a serious emergency situation? How would they access your services?
Very good question. So, for us, like, it depends on what your accessibility needs are as a deaf-blind person. Are you using hands-on sign language? Do you have a reduced visual field? Do you need support in making the... yeah, there's different ways of supporting deaf-blind people when they're using the app.
Most definitely, and I'll just maybe what I said earlier. Please tell us if there's a need that you have that we're missing. Hopefully the pod will have picked up on it, but if we are missing, please let us know. That's our problem, if you like. We will come up with a solution. We do have provisions in our interpreting service that we have a local agreement in Hampshire with Lip Speaker UK, and they will provide interpreters for deaf-blind as well.
Okay, so a question for Refuge. If I wanted to go into a women's refuge, how would I be able to refer myself?
If you contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, there is a way of being put in touch with one of refuges who are signed up to Sign Vision, and you can make the referral that way. So in the same way as speaking to a helpline advisor, you can also talk to a refuge worker with a BSL interpreter.
Brilliant. So just a follow-up to your question, how do you work together with police and refuge? Would you be able to refer to each other? Would the police refer to refuge maybe through social care, or would you visit a refuge? How would you follow that up?
So we work with the police and social services to make referrals. So professionals can also make a referral on behalf of a victim, and in some cases the police will work with the police, and if the survivor needs to be brought to the refuge, then the police can bring them in some cases. And if there's an ongoing case, then the key worker or outreach worker will work with the police on an ongoing basis to make sure that they stay in touch with each other to support the survivor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow, what amazing questions. I hope everyone watching might feel a sense of relief for some of these answers that have been provided. So thank you for you three. But I think priority, actually, we might need to think about deaf-blind people. Might need deaf-blind interpreters to be involved in this process. We don't want to leave this community out. So I really appreciate all of your discussions. Thank you so much. So now we would really like to show a video clip, a short one, about how you might be able to download the app 999BSL if you need to make that remote call to emergency services such as the firefighters, coast guards, police and ambulance services. Take a look at this. Wow. Yeah, I really want to say thank you to each of our guests who have been here and contributed. And 999BSL, the app, is incredibly valuable for us within the deaf community to communicate using our native language to contact the emergency services. A reminder that you can text 999 if you have registered first. Make sure you do register and then you can use that service. A real big thank you for the live stream today and for watching. Thank you to my guests as well. And thank you for, everyone who has watched this live stream and been involved in this program. Really appreciate what everyone has contributed and the education we have all received about the process if you do find yourself in a domestic abuse situation, for both victims and survivors who might need to contact, for instance, 999BSL. We have the app to make sure that they know the police can match our needs, and also to know where they can find a safe space to move themselves to if they need to. So we have options out there for contacting in an emergency situation, but you do need to download that app. Download the app 999BSL. So we will be showing a QR code. That QR code, if you take a scan of that, it will bring up the option to download 999BSL on your smartphones. If today you are feeling affected by the information we have spoken about today, or you're feeling you might need a bit more further advice or support, please do go onto the website, SignHealth's website, and we will also show you how you can get onto their website, and you can watch this again on your laptops, computers, iPads or phones. Just scan that QR code for SignHealth, which we will also show at the end, which will give you a link. And just one more live stream to come next time, and that will be on Thursday the 28th of March at 7 o'clock. There will be a different host, and they will be focusing and speaking on the services provided for domestic abuse survivors and victims. And we will meet a further 3 guests who work really intensely in the deaf community providing those services. This live stream has been recorded, and you will be able to watch it at a later date. It will be uploaded and announced on social media when that takes place. And we will let you know when it's available for watching. Have a lovely evening. Look after yourselves. Sleep one eye open and support each other. If you need anything, let us know. Get that support. And once this ends, you can go on the SignHealth website. Anything you need, please do go on there. The support is available for everyone. Take care. Bye now.